Welcome to the Catchpoint News Catch-Up. Now, if you've worked in tech for more than 15 minutes, you know the news moves faster than a well-tuned website loading LCP. This series will help you catch up with the headlines that matter, as well as provide both context and perspective, because, like your network, here at Catchpoint, we are highly opinionated. Joining me on this journey through the news today are Payal Chakraborty, one of our amazing product marketing managers here at Catchpoint. Hello.
Hi, Leon. Hello. Thank you for hosting us.
Not a problem. It's always good to have everyone. Next up, in our last episode, Kelly mentioned that her daughter was graduating, and that's where she is this week, is at the graduating. So taking over is Brandon DeLap. Now, I don't want to freak out the audience or bias anybody. He is the leader of our solutions engineering, which has nothing to do with sales, nothing at all. He's a capital E engineer. So it's good to have you here today. Hello.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be on. Thank you for allowing me to join today.
No problem. Always, the more the merrier. And Sergey Katsav, once again, our not at all intimidating VP of engineering. Don't worry, he's not doing a job review or anything. It's not going to show up on our PEP or anything.
It
Welcome
might.
back.
It might, but hello. Great to be back.
So before we go into the news, Sergey and Brandon, you were at a special kind of place last week, and do you want? It's a special place with other special people. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough. I actually attended two conferences last week. One was NANOG, which is the North American Network Operators Group, probably the biggest gathering of network operators in North America. So that was cool. The second was actually your favorite topic. Leon, would you like to guess what that topic is?
Oh, if you're saying it and on this show, then it has to deal with three if statements in a trench coat.
That's
Or
correct.
sometimes
It
the
was an
the
AI
bullshit marketing
conference.
term called AI. Yes.
Yes, that's the one. So the two kind of highlights for me at NANOG, the keynote speaker, who was the an executive at a large data center company, talked about how they're changing their SLAs that they give to customers from availability to latency, which I thought was really interesting because it obviously aligns very well with what Catchpoint does, but it also matched what happened at the second conference, which is that the speaker from one of the preeminent AI companies in the world gets up on stage and there's a lot of people watching. And the first thing that comes out of his mouth is, it's kind of weird to be here today when half the internet is down. And so I think that we have kind of gone to this place where, yeah, the internet is kind of sort of generally up, and performance is where the battles are being fought, so to say. But maybe sometimes it's not up, and we'll certainly talk about that with one of the articles.
Yeah, you think? Yeah, I think we're going to hit it. That's interesting. Brandon, you were also at NANOG. Anything jump out at you in terms of themes besides half the internet being down?
Yeah, yeah, that was before the internet went down. So I'm sure the overall feeling and the conference would be a lot different if the internet went down in the middle of that. Let's be honest with that. But no, I agree with Sergey there. I've been at Catchpoint for over 11 years now, and we've always been about performance. Availability is just check the box, scratch the surface when it comes to observability, and it's really great to start to see that. It's always been in the web performance, the web UI front end side of things, but it's great to see and hear that performance and latency is becoming a driver of, as Sergey mentioned, right, how the battles are being fought, really how your company can get ahead of the other uh, potential competitors in your space with just becoming faster than your competitors. So it's great to hear that at a network operators conference. That's for sure.
Right, and I think it's, yeah. If the event happened while during NANOG, I think you'd see like the entire room stand up as one and just walk out, or they'd immediately divide up into worm. It actually would be kind of interesting to watch.
Right? Maybe just all in one, just tackle this
Just a
problem
big root
together,
cause
right?
analysis. Yeah.
Right, like the
Exactly.
entire room collectively, like, all right, folks, here
Rolled
we
up their
go.
sleeves. Exactly.
Let's make this happen. All right, and I think we've hinted at it enough. Payal, you are actually leading off our news articles with something that might have to do with what we were just talking about. Why don't you tell us your article, and we'll go from there.
All right. So, my article is all about the internet went down on Thursday. And what do we want to know about it? So, on June 12, 2025, there was a configuration update to Google Cloud's quota control system that triggered a null point error in the service control binary. That what happened is it crashed the API authorization globally. And the outage lasted approximately. Would anybody like to take a guess how much it lasted for?
We
Approximately.
don't have
Longer
to
than it
guess.
should have.
We we don't have to guess. We lived it. It was last week. Like I don't remember
Oh,
what I had for breakfast in the morning, but I still do know. It was like it was hours. It was out for hours,
it was approximately 3 hours and it was
right?
peaking around 2 p.m. ET. Yes. And not surprisingly, but it disrupted over 70 Google services, including Gmail, Drive, Meet, and the third-party platforms like Spotify, Discord, Shopify, and Cloudflare. So, what was the impact? Users and businesses worldwide experienced downtime, API failures, and service interruptions. Now, what if this feature had lacked code safeguards or feature flag protections? The faulty deployment could have been contained in a staging environment. So, what is that we learn from here, and what does Google plan to do to prevent such recurrences? So, Google plans to improve error handling, feature handling gating, and incremental deployments, and better monitoring safeguards. That's all I have for today. Thank you.
That's enough. That's plenty. So I think it's important before we opine on this is to say, first of all, nobody here on Catchpoint News Catchup is pointing fingers or saying we could have done it better or how could they have let this happen. We've all been there. We've all been through outages. We have all struggled and suffered and had to deal with the beginning, the middle, and the end and the aftermath of it. We're
And in,
sending
and in
love.
some of our cases, we've caused them. So I feel for them.
There's a whole other show about, all right, let's talk about the biggest outage you personally caused.
Right.
I was on one where somebody dropped all of the airports on the eastern seaboard offline once. I mean, like, yeah, that's a whole other show. All the outages I've ever loved before. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that we are sending love and support to everybody at Google and all the GCP folks for what we know was a very stressful day. That's not what we're doing here. Is what we want to do is take away that uh, you can appreciate from that one event, from those 2 or 3 hours, how interconnected everything has become. One of the things that at Catchpoint we have started to say is that the internet is your network fabric, right? Is your appliance infrastructure. So just having an appreciation for that, I think, is one thing that we can do. But also, failures happen. They happen to all of us. In most cases, it's not because one person unplugged the internet, right? And you can blame that one person. It was, a cascade of events. And that's my whole opinion is these things happen. Everyone goes through them. Be kind and empathetic when you see it happen. Don't try to assume you know better.
Yeah. And it can certainly happen to the biggest of companies. It can happen to the smallest of companies. And I think we'll see as a theme in this episode dependencies, 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 right? You control your parts of the system and you control what they rely on and how they rely on different things, but you don't actually control those dependencies themselves.
Right. Now, anyone have anything else to add or opinions to share?
Yeah, definitely. I'm I'm with you there, Leon. I think the impact, right? Impacted, someone from my mom, just trying to watch the news during the day, to even someone, even some of observability platforms, and obviously the infrastructure that powers the tools and providers that people don't even know about. And it shows how, as you mentioned, right, interconnected the internet, which makes sense, right, is, and how fragile it can be in today's world. And I think the best thing about this is the blameless, right, being blameless about it, and the service providers who understand that, and made sure that they were a part of that, and they weren't pointing fingers, right, and they were letting their customers know, hey, we are down. We're trying to fix this issue. We know that it's a third-party service provider of ours, and we're going to do our best to figure out a way to, avoid these possible disruptions in the future. So, as you mentioned, they do happen. Unfortunately, they tend to happen in the summer, when more folks are on the internet potentially. But definitely, definitely some big news this past week.
Yep. Yeah, and just as obviously in the space that Catchpoint is in, it was interesting to see all of our internal, external, et cetera, dashboards just start lighting up, right, with all of the various services that went down, and then the root cause, right, that, hey, this one was GCP, and just being able to, we always try to answer the is it me or is it somebody else question, right?
Yeah,
And so for our customers, that was of course very easy to do. In this particular case, I think it was kind of easy for everyone on the internet because so much of it was down. But yeah, it was interesting to see the kind of progression of events as they bubbled through the system.
definitely. Okay. Article number 2, Sergey, you're leading
All
this one off.
right. Article number 2. So we're talking about Figma, a big technology company, let's say. And so the title is From Multi-Day Latency to Near Real-Time Insights, Figma's Data Pipeline Upgrade. And so they talk about how they upgraded their business intelligence data pipeline from a single daily cron job, which pushed the entire table, to a scalable system that does these incremental updates, and how they went about it. And so for me, obviously a couple of different highlights. The biggest one in this article is actually that build versus buy decision that they had to make. And my personal philosophy with build versus buy is, except for the edge cases where something is either truly trivial or prohibitively expensive, the decision comes down to core competencies. Is it something at Catchpoint that is related to observability, related to internet performance monitoring, something that is helping us do the thing that customers are frankly paying us to do? If not, then it probably makes more sense to buy it. For Figma, they did this analysis, and they looked at all of the various systems that they can use to solve this problem, and they found that in fact it would be cost prohibitive. It would be 5 or 10x times, they said, more expensive to buy it than building it themselves. And so they also kind of implemented a halfway solution, which I think is always nice, right? In engineering, you think about different continuums and what scale do you build something at, how do you architect it. So they used low level components that they essentially bought from the various cloud providers, rather than building it completely from the ground up and then tied those together. And the second piece is that they have two data pipelines. So one is for their actual production systems, one is for their business intelligence pipeline. And Catchpoint does exactly the same thing. We have our fast, highly performant pipeline for our observability platform, and we have a business intelligence pipeline that does exactly the same as Figma's. And the requirements of those pipelines are very different. And so you have to analyze the customer requirements and figure out what it is that you're trying to build. And the last thing, the elephant in the room, so to say, with this article, the reason that they took this project on to begin with is that their customers were complaining, right? Their old pipeline was no longer scaling. It was too slow. It was having high latency problems. Now, part of that is because it was only happening once per day, but also it was just too slow. As the system grew, it wasn't reliable anymore. And so they got those requirements from their customers, upgraded the pipeline, and saw a significant improvement in developer productivity. And they talk about that in the article also, right? So always tie those kind of scalability improvements and observability goals to customer outcomes, which is what they did here.
Nice. All right. What are the opinions? Who wants
Did
to
I
go
cover
first?
it all?
We definitely covered it all. I guess when it comes to the build versus buy and these types of problems, when it comes to obviously, developing a platform that could grow and expand, I guess when tell me more about the timing on this. I guess you mentioned a little bit of it in the article, mentioned a little bit of it, obviously, when the customers started complaining and started feeling the issue, right? But how can you get ahead of the timing of some of these issues and rather than wait for these problems to happen and to creep up, how can you like keep an eye on these things to
Yeah.
make sure that your customers aren't impacted before you have to decide, all right, let's spend the next 6 months potentially building something new.
Thank you for putting that ball right on the tee for me, to use a sports metaphor that I don't know. Are we allowed to use sports metaphors here?
We
So
can sports ball a little,
okay,
but we have to do it
Definitely.
wrong.
When
okay.
I'm
So
on.
yeah.
So personally, I preach the observable software development lifecycle, right? And so if you think about that continuum that I think everybody has seen for DevOps, the infinity sign with the feedback loops, the goal is to figure out what the business objectives are up front and then develop to those. And the way you develop to those is that you have observability built into that loop from the development process to the testing to actually running and maintaining the system, right? So I'm just making assumptions here, but let's say Figma or any other company said, hey, you know what? These are our performance goals. The synchronization needs to take less than, I don't know, 10 minutes for these internal use cases. The reliability has to be that it fails no more than once per day. Whatever your business objectives are, right? Different companies will have different objectives. You set those, you monitor them, and then you know when you're approaching those limits.
Any other thoughts before I dive in?
Leon has thoughts.
Yes. Surprising. Shocking. I know. All right. I just want to point out that select star from table is making my eye twitch. Like, okay, I know that they are simplifying for the case for the purposes of an article. I'm sure it was not just that, but the fact that they published select star from table is just like, no, don't ever do that. That's the first thing. So there's that. Beyond that, though, I think the thing that jumped out for me was that this article is just so damn relatable. And like we've all been there. We've all been through the build versus buy decision, and B, I mean, for if you haven't read the article, and it's going to be in the show description, right? Please take a look at it for no other reason that it is a really wonderful sort of like a diary or almost a loving retrospective of the experience from start to finish. And if you're maybe new to career in IT, or new to this area of tech, take a look at it because they really did a great job of sort of just articulating what it's like to be in this kind of project, which is very, very common, both in large cases like this and even small cases. Just, hey, we're migrating a web page from over here to there, or we're doing this other thing. It encapsulated for me the day-to-day experience of IT practitioners. And so that was the other reason that I really enjoyed reading it, was because it was just relatable. Okay. Anything else before we move on? Fabulous. Okay, then Brandon, welcome to the show. It's your turn. Let's hear it. What do What do you got for us?
Yeah, excellent. So the article that I picked today, it's actually kind of funny because I chose the article, I read it, went to the conference, one of those nights on HBO. Independence Day was actually on. So it was it's funny how some things connect, very similar to the internet, but very very relatable here in this sense where it's all about essentially this company is it created this open source software running on long range radio waves. So something that can actually operate when, for example, like on Thursday, if the whole internet went down. Now you can't necessarily hop on Instagram or hop on a call like we are right now. But when things go wrong, they've developed this open source software and infrastructure where you can actually communicate device to device as long as there's clear line of vision. So that's a very very large caveat, unfortunately, at this point in time. So right now, where they're actually using it is some cases like analog astronauts on potentially Mars, right? So clear line of sight, device to device, now being able to communicate via, just short messages. But there is the possibility to add additional software on top of that if you want and send longer messages, heavier messages. So it's really cool. Not cool in the sense that hopefully this never happens. Hopefully we don't have the need for this type of technology, but I like how they're actually thinking about using it in those cases when it's talking about space travel where the internet's not a thing, right, and it's not available. But yeah, it's really cool. It's actually available if if you're a hobbyist, is what they're saying right now. I think it makes the most sense for. But there are some local communities that are actually leveraging this today, and you can hop on if you read the article. You can actually click on an interactive map and see where some of these networks are up and running. One other cool thing is, so they have some conferences as well, and they had a small conference. They got everyone together, and they actually someone overloaded it and brought down the entire network at the conference. So I thought that was kind of funny and cool. Obviously, talking about just overall scalability of infrastructure and services and they're obviously working on that. There's another conference coming up and more people this time. So hopefully the fix that they implemented will help them avoid those issues in the future. But the devices, for example, you can get some that are pre-made. They already have a casing on it. Some of them have some cool designs. If you have a 3D printer, you can actually print out your own casing for it. And the fact that it's open source as well, right? So the community can add to it and expand the essentially just what you can use this technology for. So yeah, that's about it. But really, really cool article. So if you do have the chance to read it, I definitely recommend.
Awesome. All right. What are the opinions? Dive in.
For me, this one. So the technology is cool, right? I agree with you. I think you said enough on that. For me, this is interesting because of the what ifs, right? The root cause analysis, the critical thinking aspects. In root cause analysis, there's this concept of the five whys. You keep asking why to drill deeper, 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 deeper. So similar here, right? When you're doing a risk analysis, you kind of say like, well, what could go wrong with this system? Where the system, in this case, is the internet, and apparently a lot can go wrong with it. But even if this system that they've created never actually needs to be used, doing that analysis helps you understand the potential weaknesses or the various things that could go wrong, and hopefully you set up resiliencies in their place.
Yeah. So I love the stress testing
Mm-hmm.
aspect of that kind of conference. Like, we think it can be resilient. Oh, no, it can't. Okay.
Just kidding.
So I will say that the second paragraph of the article took a turn I wasn't expecting. Having no cell service or Wi-Fi happens, could happen all the time. Of course, maybe you're hiking in a secluded area, or white knuckling through a major natural disaster, or living under a repressive regime that cuts internet access and quash public, like, that got dark really fast. That really, that wasn't what I was looking for there. This does sound like almost a ham radio experience for
Mm-hmm.
people who don't want to dive like. Is anyone, any of you ham radio? I am not, but any
No.
ham radio operators? Okay, it's. I have a few friends who are, and I make fun of them for it. But it's it's a whole culture, it's a whole community. It was pre-internet community, that kind of thing. This seems like a way to get involved in it. I also thought about the forget about natural disasters and stuff like that. I thought this might be a wonderful sort of, if you have a tight knit community. You could build one of these on the cheap to just keep track of each other without requiring internet access. I know that some communities don't want or don't appreciate internet access. This is a way to still have texting or whatever on devices that are completely disconnected. I've got an old phone here. I don't
Yep.
want it on whatever. I did like the Q&A aspect. Can I replace the internet with this? No, you cannot. Like, boom, flat out, like, no waffling about, well, maybe in the future we want. No, that is not a thing. But it does have emojis. I love the fact that the article had to call out that it does have emojis. Like, I couldn't possibly use texting without emojis. I must have these. And Brandon, you had mentioned the DIY-ness. I love that part. I love the fact that yes, you can just buy one if that's what you want to do, but you can also build almost every part of this and really trick it out if that's what you want to do. That was what jumped out at me. Of course, the question we're all asking: can you play Doom on it? Like, I think that's always a question, right?
Yeah. I think
The,
the one
the,
thing too is the firmware piece, right? The fact that they mentioned, hey, this is a cool device if you want to, keep it updated, keep it operated, keep it running. It reminds me of, like PlayStations and Xboxes nowadays. Every time you spin it up once a month, you got to update your games, and it takes about 2 hours. So that's the one drawback, right? If it was like ready to go, I would throw it in, the earthquake box, just in case anything happened, but. That's the one drawback, right? I gotta continuously update it, keep the firmware, But other than that, it would. I definitely looked on Amazon. And was like, you know what? It's only $30.
I okay, and like I said, I'm thinking about having one just on and running, and just build a
Just see who
inter-community.
starts talking to you.
Right? And yeah,
Yeah, yeah, right. See if aliens.
there's too many houses near me. I think the line of sight thing would
That's true.
probably. I'd have to get on the roof probably.
There you go. All right. Anything else? Anyone else have any thoughts? Okay. The last one. The last article. Let's get it up on the screen. There we go. I would like the record to reflect that this week there were about 47 items about how bad AI is, and I chose something else. I just, I might not love AI, but I don't obsessively need to hammer that point home constantly. And I like to
Except right
remind people
now.
it's not that, except right now, it's not that I hate AI. I hate the way you're using AI. That's what I hate. Okay. The article, Why DNS Security is Your First Defense Against Cyber Attacks. This was in HackerNews. And the article quickly explains what DNS is. I thought that was really nice to have that quick explainer, and how DNS fits into, quote unquote, the internet at large, and why DNS is such a critical aspect of people's ability to use everything from software as a service, applications in the web, and all of it. And then it pivots quickly to talking about the way DNS can be messed with, can actually be used as an attack vector, not only to break things, but to be used as a part of an attempt to hack individual users. And then it turns into a commercial for a DNS that is a little bit more robust and stuff like that. And we're not here to promote any particular brand of DNS or any company. So I'm going to stop there. But I do want to warn you that does sort of pivot that direction. But the beginning part of it, where it contextualizes what's going on, was really nice. Obviously, this is where I would put the "it's always DNS" joke, right? Um, but the fact is that just like the thing about have you tried turning it off and back on again, the reason why it's always DNS is funny is because it's always DNS. It's a lot. It's DNS a lot, like a lot, and I also like the fact that it didn't trivialize DNS and say it was some like basic low level, like, this is signaling on copper. It's just electrical signal. Like they really do talk about what DNS is, and that it is a sophisticated technology that has existed for a long time and has gone through upgrades and things. And I appreciate that. And I also like the fact that they put it in the framework of, first of all, the internet cannot live without it. Like we can talk about how bad it is or how it breaks, but the internet cannot exist without this. But also, it's kind of brittle. It's kind of delicate, and so you have to keep an eye on it. And it's not one of those set it and forget it, it's just going to take care of itself kind of technologies. And that's both for individual companies to be aware that DNS is a thing that has to be managed and maintained, just like your storage, just like your internet ISP service. You have to keep an eye on it and see what it's doing. But also the internet as an existing thing relies on it, and therefore it's important to keep an eye on how it's doing, broadly speaking. And I think that we need more articles like this that sort of demystify and also contextualize these basic technologies. So that's why I really liked it. What did you all think about it?
It is always DNS, or usually DNS, right? But it's funny, but it's not funny. And that's because DNS is the biggest dependency that internet systems have, right? Just about every company uses a CDN. Just about every company nowadays has an ad network, all of these other dependencies. Every single one uses DNS. And yeah, it can break, right? You talked about how this article uh, talks up the virtues and the recent enhancements to DNS, etc. And that's true. It's certainly evolved over the decades it's been around. But the reality is, because it is used everywhere by the entire internet, there's not widespread adoption for these enhancements. And so when it comes to security, of course, it's the lowest common denominator that the attackers attack, right? And so they're going to attack the insecure version of DNS, the non-resilient DNS services, and then they'll propagate to some chunk of the world, and their attack is successful.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts?
Now, obviously, there's probably another chat, another webinar specific for this and how Catchpoint can help when it comes to these scenarios. But every day I see something going wrong with DNS. It's not always availability or reachability. It's latency driven too, right? I mean, if you get a small spike in DNS for your users, that's literally the first impression
Yeah.
of any user trying to access your digital service. And it is like, if we go back to the outage itself on Thursday, right, and the fact that it impacted everyone, right? Even if we go back to my mom, right, trying to watch the news or access the news, go on Instagram, the first thing that she does is type in a DNS address, right? We're not typing in individual IPs, right? We're getting the job done there and making it easy to access the internet. And DNS is what does that. So it's definitely something that I talk about almost every day with the folks that I talk to, and um, it's something that, as Sergey mentioned, I think more and more companies are going to start adopting these enhancements because those initial lower level attacks aren't available there for those attackers. So they're going to try the next level, and the only way to get or to avoid those is to enhance your security, or your DNS. So definitely looking forward to the future in the DNS space. The article mentioned a couple of those, and and they're obviously cool technologies that I'm hearing about more and hearing more and more companies adapt. So looking forward to
Yeah,
it.
I'm going to echo something I said last week when we were talking about LinkedIn and LinkedIn's enhancements to their environment. I hope that they will also share, that they will share these enhancements so that regular DNS, open source DNS, can also be made more resilient. This isn't. It shouldn't always be about. And I know that I get Pollyanna and I get tree huggy and all that stuff, but it really shouldn't always be about how do we make a product and make people have to pay for the basic service. Roads are a common service that we all use and we all pay into that. And DNS is, similar to that. I think that DNS should be naturally resilient and robust. And if there are some basic things that can be done to bind, which is what DNS, was called a while ago, then those enhancements should also be shared. I hope that those things propagate out so that, everyone's level of resilience, goes up as well. So, all right. Well, this was a good session. We will be back in 2 weeks to take a look at the news again. I appreciate everyone, all three of you, because I'm the fourth, all three of you taking some time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
I'd like to take just another minute to thank my co-hosts as well as Catchpoint for giving us space to do fun things like this show. I also want to thank the news cycle itself for providing a never-ending source of education, intrigue, amusement, and horror. But most of all, I'd like to thank everyone watching or listening. Here at Catchpoint, we recognize there's an almost infinite amount of content that you can consume, and we really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to listen to us. Thank you again. For Catchpoint News Catchup, I'm Leon Adato.